Hi, I'm Morgan McCullum. I'm here with Tyler Schlagenhauf from Mylo Bybee. And we're here to talk a little bit about what they're doing in general, but also what they're doing with Treefort coming up. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So can you tell me a little bit about your band? Maybe give me like a elevator pitch.
Yeah, so we started about, 3-4 years ago, maybe, really in the middle of the pandemic. And yeah, we're a local band here that's been playing for, a couple of years together. We originally formed the band with my brother, who's currently in the band, bass player, and then at the time, my brother-in-law as the drummer. So it started off as kind of a close little family band and has expanded a little bit to, we have a new drummer now, we have a lead guitar player now in the band. But yeah, just really started off as kind of that, garage band in the middle of lockdown when nobody else could really play shows or anything. Just started to form some songs and got an initial EP recorded, and yeah, just play around town, play around surrounding states a little bit right now, and then have a full-length album that we put out last year.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw that you guys had a new fully produced full-length album out on there.
Yeah.
I guess I say new, but
sure.
relatively.
Yeah. Our newest.
Yeah. It's got a nice sound to it as well. I was able to find it on YouTube. I assume that you have it uploaded to various...
on all those streaming platforms.
Awesome. Is this your first time playing Treefort?
Nope, this is our fourth time, I believe.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when will you be playing? Where will you be playing?
So we play Thursday at 5 o'clock on the Boise Brewing stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So are you guys, you're being local, have you attended Treefort before you were participants in it?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from Boise originally, but then moved away for a long time, and I moved back in 2016. And then I think 2017 was the first time I ever attended a Treefort. And then it was a couple of years later until I actually formed a band to be able to submit to play in it. But yeah, I attended a couple times before attending it as an artist or playing it as an artist. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So with your group, are you guys working on some more music? Are you, going along with promoting the album that you've put out? What are you guys working on? So
a little bit of all of that. So still promoting the album Master and Machine, our previous full-length album, but we just set some dates to record a new 7-song EP. So we're recording in the middle of April, and then release those gradually leading up to the summer of 2025. So stay tuned, but a lot more to come. Myself, I'm somebody who's always been interested in, music and all that stuff. Never been much of a creator of music or a producer or any of that stuff. What kind of a turnaround is it for you? I mean, you mentioned that you're going to be recording in April and then hoping to release in the following summer? No, it'd be this summer.
Summer. Okay,
this summer.
Okay.
We're really ramping up to record those 7 songs in the middle of April, and then be ready to release those on a individual single basis shortly after that. But then probably the full-on album release probably late summer this year. We've traditionally, the last couple of releases, we've worked with a label, and so we were somewhat under their umbrella of like the release plan, etc. Yeah. But we're actually choosing to go this route, self-release. And so we have a little bit more flexibility in terms of what we want our release plan to look like, how and when and where. And so, yeah, just really looking forward to navigating that process on our own. We recorded our first EP way back in, 2020 maybe. And that was a self-release as well, but on a pretty small scale. We were just getting started and whatnot. But sure. But now, yeah, look to kind of ramp that up and do a full-on release ourselves.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's... I know that from the video maker's perspective, music, once labels start getting involved, gets pretty complicated and all that. So I imagine that even from a creator standpoint, there's also all sorts of hoops to jump through.
Yeah, our experience, and obviously this isn't the case with all labels, but we're working with one out of Atlanta. They're based in Atlanta and London, and it was pretty much a lot of like hurry up and wait, you know. And again, that's obviously not the experience with all labels. And what's really nice about the Boise music scene, especially, is, I mean, there are top-notch people in every category that you could need to release an album right here in Boise. In terms of, I mean, you have videographers and photographers and marketing experts and, you know, people that are staples in the music business that live right here in Boise. And so that's something that we've found. And so rather than like looking outside of our own city where we're at and where we play and where we're most well known, you know, it's almost consolidating the efforts and utilizing the resources that we've built relationships with here in the community, and, you know, B, just there's a lot to be said about kind of keeping it, you know, to that local vibe, especially when we live in such a flourishing artistic community overall, not just musically, but for all the arts. Yeah,
well, and that's something that, I mean, kind of what started my whole process of trying to raise awareness about the art that's being created here in this area is, I mean, I had the mistaken impression that it was, you know, a creative desert for a lot of years.
For sure.
I mean, I avoided coming to Boise. I lived in Wilder at the time. But, you know, once I started coming here and it's everywhere. It's just, for sure, it seems like it's just right under the surface.
Right, right. And the web is just kind of growing. And, you know, I mean, I grew up here and I was somebody who was in the music, you know, culture here, and grew up going to shows all over the place here, and, you know, was intertwined in the music community here in Boise. And then, like I said, I left and moved away for a while and then moved back. And as I started to get myself more integrated into the music community here, I just found that early on. It's like, this is really a hotbed for a lot of things artistically, and really, really, really high quality stuff. Not just like access, but like what's being put out of Boise in terms of the music that you're seeing and the artists that you're seeing on, like, not even just a local scale, right? That's branching out on more of a national scale too. And obviously Treefort, you know, has helped to put Boise on the map for artists, you know, whereas artists may have not historically have stopped here, like on tour or something. Yeah. It's like that. It's a spot now that everyone kind of knows about. And I think that just kind of helps to flourish, you know, everything else we're doing here as independent artists to be able to leverage what's right here in our community.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you mentioned bands kind of passing over the area. Yeah. I've lived here for about, it's just over 20 years that I've lived in the valley here, and definitely I've seen where bands will like come to Salt Lake and then hop over to Portland, you know, and it does seem like we're getting a lot more groups coming through here of those national artists and things like that. But bringing it back a little local here. So obviously we got Treefort coming up. Do you guys do shows locally otherwise?
Yeah, we do. We try to play, you know, once a month, maybe once every other month locally. But then we're continuing to, like, aside from like putting together a full-on tour, we try to branch out and play, you know, other areas as well outside of the local community. But yeah, we'll play once a month, once every other month around town. We've almost checked off all the venues in town. There's a couple that we haven't played quite yet, but and that's another thing that's really great about the local music community is there's a lot of venues, and also some that are starting to pop up where they may have not historically had live music, that are starting to have more live music, which is super cool to see. You know, even from obviously a full band perspective, but even down to like a solo artist perspective. Like anywhere you go now, you're seeing live music, which for me, for a music lover, is amazing. Anywhere you go, you're just kind of engulfed in it, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to a show tonight, most likely, for St. Patrick's Day. But it'll be, I believe, the third time I've seen this particular artist, and it'll be, I think, the third venue I've seen them at. I mean, they play at bars, but yeah, I mean, I've seen the concerts at Mad Swede downtown.
Yep.
This one in particular is going to be at Quinn's on Vista. There was another bar on Vista called like the Vista Bar or something like that,
right.
I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all these little. I grew up. My dad was a saxophone player in a rock band, and so I mean, I grew up in those saloon type bars that allow kids until X amount of hours.
For sure, yeah.
And so it's really nostalgic for me to see all these like small venues that are set up with. It's really intimate, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that too, because you know, as you start to get bigger venues, obviously we've always had like the Big Easy before, the Knitting Factory now. You have Treefort Music Hall in terms of a big venue, and then you get your really big ones here, you know, and Extra Mile and Botanical Gardens and all those. But then you have every tier, right, of venue here, even down to like still your classic house shows, which you can't really beat those. That's what I grew up going to and what I grew up knowing. And I mean, you have really every layer of venue there, you know, and there's even some like venues that are you wouldn't know about them unless you went to a show there. And there's just something really cool and nostalgic about that. You know, you have all of those options. And I think that's another thing that brings more bands here. It's not just like, oh, if such and such venue's booked that night, we're kind of screwed. You know, we got to move on. You have endless options of places that you could play, which is cool. Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're willing to go into those smaller venues.
Yep, exactly.
So, you know, aside from live or I guess, you know, I briefly mentioned streaming platforms and stuff, but where can people find your music? Where can people listen to you?
Yeah, so obviously the streaming platforms, you know, I think a lot of musicians have kind of a love-hate relationship with some of the streaming platforms. Obviously, it allows you to broadcast your stuff out there on a much larger scale than ever before. But then there's still a lot to be said for like your band camps, you know, where money that is raised from merchandising or whatever like that will, you know, mostly go back to the artist. Majority of it goes back to the artist there. So definitely all the streaming platforms, Bandcamp. We have a full-on website too that you can go to. We have a mailing list there. Join the mailing list, and then we'll keep, you know, everyone updated with the happenings of the band. And then Instagram. Instagram is another place where we definitely drive a lot of our people to learn things about the band. We keep shows updated there. We have links out to all of our other stuff from that one place. So yeah, all of those.
Awesome. And now you play guitar, is that right?
I play guitar, yep.
And how long have you been playing guitar?
Oh, geez. I've been playing guitar for probably 25 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you saw me play, you wouldn't guess 25 years, maybe more like 5. But I've been playing for about that long. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any musical influences that kind of may influence? That's a dumb thing to say.
I know what you're going
that influences
to.
your sound?
For sure. So that's always a funny conversation because, you know, anytime we play shows, we will almost always get somebody who comes up and says, like, you remind us of XYZ band. Majority of the time, it's a band that like I grew up listening to and loving, which obviously I always love to hear that. And it's like, well, that makes sense because that's who my influences were. From a songwriting perspective, like, because I write the lyrics too, I'm the singer as well.
Okay.
From a songwriter and I guess a lyric standpoint, I've been a huge Jim Croce fan forever. And that was, you know, my dad listened to Jim Croce, and I think that's where I first picked up on it. But just from a lyricist standpoint, it really been just very simple, like nothing too deep, that just kind of portrays, you know, the thought or the emotion that you're trying to evoke in the song. So Jim Croce, James Taylor from a lyric standpoint, but then like actually from bands that, you know, I grew up listening to and really loved, like Manchester Orchestra is one of my all-time favorites. Deer Hunter is one of my all-time favorites. As Tall as Lions. So we get a lot of that. We get often compared a lot to like a Death Cab for Cutie. Okay. Or we've got Decemberists a couple times.
Well, I mean, I definitely think that you guys have like the polished indie sound.
For sure,
you know?
For sure. We often will get like the early 2000s rock comparisons, which totally makes sense.
I could see that. Yeah. I mean, you guys definitely have your own unique sound.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I think that, you know, identifying yourselves as being in that indie genre,
Sure.
you know, I mean, I think that there's a certain expectation to the sound that comes from that. And I mean, you definitely hit those notes.
For sure.
You know?
Well, and it's funny too, because it's come full, you know, we've been pretty lucky. It's come full circle in some ways. You know, there's a couple of bands that were some of my favorites growing up who we've now got to open for and play with. So like the Spill Canvas was one of my favorite bands. Ascenders in the early November, like one of my favorite bands, and we opened for both of them. The Polyphonic Spree, you know, I used to listen to them forever. We got to open for them at Treefort Music Hall. Hawthorne Heights we opened for, which was a really fun, you know, screamo band that kind of was in the initial stages of that screamo phase. We got to open for them, and all of them even gave comparisons, which was really, again, kind of for me in particular, kind of just a full circle experience to hear from some of these people who had such an influence on what I was doing, and you know, to hear them say that, hey, you sound like such and such band or whatever was really cool.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty wild to have some of your idols or
for sure.
You know, say, you know who you are. Absolutely. And listen to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, music has always been, you know, a huge, just part of, it's been a huge influence on me. It's impacted everything. Like, I've dabbled in bass playing. I am horrible. I can play part of one song. That's about it. But, you know, music is such an important part, and it's such a personal thing for so many people. You know, one of the things that I have always been kind of curious about is, you mentioned that you write the song, or at least in part. I don't know if you do it entirely. But, you know, with songwriting, can you tell me a little bit about how you get there? Do you start with like a melody in your head? Do you start with like a poem that you then write music to?
Sure. Yeah, so ours is a pretty... I don't really want to say unconventional, because I think every band's process is their own, right? But it's a different process in that I couldn't tell you one note on the guitar.
Yeah.
My brother, who plays bass, he had never played bass before. He's a great guitar player and you know, does a lot of solo stuff himself. Before we started this band, he had never played it before, and I was just like, do you want to start jamming together? And then so he just started playing bass. He couldn't tell you, you know, a note on the bass, but if you hear bass lines in our songs, I still am like, how did you learn that? How do you remember that? How do you play that? And so we're very, like, again, air quotes, unconventional in like our process, but really kind of going back to your question, I usually will come in with a hook. Like, I start with the hook typically for the chorus, and I'll have like guitar parts that I've meddled around with for years, usually start off on an acoustic guitar and then try to match it, you know, to a hook. And then how we are now, where we're at now in our process, is I'll typically bring, you know, a good bass line, a good foundation to the guys that usually has that melody and that hook, and then kind of build out from there, build out around that. I mean, I'll be the first to say that I hate writing lyrics. Like, that's I always save that to the last part. Here's a tidbit of information, secret to anybody who's maybe seen us play. Sometimes when I'm singing lyrics, I'm just making them up on the spot, and they don't make any sense because I don't have finalized lyrics yet
Awesome.
until we get into the studio, just because it's one of those things I just put off till the end. For me, it comes easier getting something and pieces and parts together on a guitar, bringing in the drums, trying to portray what I'm hearing, you know, and the great part of the guys that I have in the band right now is just like everybody is bringing in their own flavor, their own style, their own mix. We recently just added a lead guitar player that we've never had. Like, we've always been a three-piece. And so now he's able to kind of layer in his suggestions and thoughts and ideas, where he's coming from a different musical background, as we all are, and influences and whatnot. And so it's really kind of a perfect storm of meshing together different ideas, you know, based off that kind of foundation or baseline that I'm bringing in from something that I've either written recently or years ago.
Sure.
And, you know, through like our last album in particular, there's like 2 songs on there that are probably songs I've had for 15 years. And when I say songs, I mean like I had that hook, I had that foundation for it, and that to where they are now from when they originally started are completely different, which is just all part of that process. So that was a super long-winded answer, but that's kind of a little
great.
bit into
You know, I mean, so for me, like when I'm listening to music, I am a lyrics first listener.
Sure.
You know, I like.
So you'd notice when I was just making stuff up, probably.
I tend to like when a lyric or when a song is like, I don't know, telling a story or something almost.
For sure.
Within certain reasons. I'm a punk fan, so there's only certain stuff that gets, you know, there's only so much you can say in 2 minutes.
Sure,
right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, really.
But I mean, that said, though, you know, the music has to strike me as well.
For sure.
And you know, I definitely didn't listen to your guys' music enough to follow the lyrics that I was hearing.
Sure,
I mean, I could follow them, but
right.
I don't know any lyrics.
Yeah.
But I mean, that music is enough to draw me in. The sound of the band, and I can only imagine that adding another guitar into that mix would just deepen that layer.
For sure, we're really excited about that. The last few shows that we've played, we've kind of had a lead guitar player, and then it was kind of a hodgepodge there for a while, meaning we had a couple different guitarists for lead parts that had been written over a couple different shows. You know, you play band member roulette as you do so often, and but now we have somebody who's been playing with us for a while and able to kind of bring his perspective, which is really cool. You know, and one of the things I like about once you create something like that comes from that starting point, comes to fruition in terms of what the final product is. You know, people will always ask me like, what is this song about? And I always hesitate to answer that because it could be about something for me who wrote it at a certain time, but 10 different people could listen to it and have 10 different emotions that were evoked or ideas and thoughts. And in my opinion, that's what it's all about. Like, people should take whatever they want to take or need to take from a song that they're listening to. And kind of create their own thought behind what the song means to them, which is again something I always feel is what music is all about.
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely been the person who's sat around having beers with friends and conversing about what the lyrics of a certain song
and they're
mean,
not all and you probably disagree and for sure.
Oh, theory crafting, and then you read a statement from the artist themselves.
You're like, wasn't even close.
It can be so far off.
For sure.
But that's art, right? It's
100%.
It's interpreted by the viewer, listener, whatever.
Right.
So, do you have a track off of your most recent album that you think would be like, if you only listen to one, like this should be it?
So I'll give you two, and I'll give you two only because I think they're such different vibes. So we have a song on the album called "Run Run," which is a very like upbeat, poppy, like, you know, really fast, deep drum tracks going the whole time, that kind of get you inspired and moving and whatnot. And that's what the album opens with. And so I've definitely, if you're in that type of mood, I would definitely recommend that. Then completely opposite end of the spectrum, we end the album with a song called "Best for Last." Very, you know, a much slower, melodic, folky vibe that ends in kind of like really powerful, heavy distortion gain, like melodic outro. So two different ends of the spectrum, but I would recommend checking both of those out. And it's kind of interesting too, because if you look at our album art and you don't listen to any of the songs, you would think we're like, you'd walk away being like, is this a super hardcore band or like, you know, a metal band? Like just looking at our cover. And I tried to do that. I shouldn't say I tried to do that. I think I internalized it, you know, thinking that it would span the gamut of kind of our sound, if that makes sense, because we have like title track on the album is Master and Machine, which is probably the heaviest song on the album, but then floats all the way down to the, like I said, the Best for Last, you know, the really slow. And I kind of wanted it to be that curveball that people kind of caught. So anyway, those two songs, Run Run and Best for Last.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, and I'm the person who like traditionally, I mean, it's been a while since I bought a a CD
Sure,
necessarily,
for sure, yeah,
but like
right.
I'm the person who puts the CD in, I press play on track one.
Same.
I listen to it all the
Same.
way through at least once.
Yep.
For
sure.
'Cause, I mean, I don't think that every artist, designs their album to be, a thorough or a 1 through
beginning
12,
to end,
whatever.
like walk through. Yeah.
But in the occasion that they do, or that the songs tie together, I think that's an awesome way to go.
It's interesting too, because I definitely position the songs on there in that way. So like from start to finish, it's kind of following somewhat of a pattern and a vibe. But just another thing when you're working with a third-party label and whatnot, they got all uploaded to the streaming platforms in a random order, and so that kind of went out the window in terms of like if you were just pushing play and listening to it from beginning to end, which I haven't done it that way, so I'm curious if I listen to it, I'd be like, oh, that also fits. But anyway, that was just kind of something there where we'll have more control this time.
No, that's really interesting. So if somebody were to come out to your show on this coming, or this is Thursday, is that the 27th?
27th, yep.
Okay, yeah. I'm recording a live podcast at Podfort that same day.
Oh, perfect. Oh, excellent.
So I will definitely be around downtown, and
Cool.
I hope to catch you guys.
Yeah, come check it out.
So if somebody comes to your show, would they expect to hear just stuff off your newest album? Would they expect to hear some of your older EP stuff as well? Some new?
All of it. We'll play some from the original EP that we had. We'll play some from Master and Machine, our full length, and then definitely songs from our upcoming recorded album.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah,
So get a little preview of what's to come.
Yep, for sure.
Have you guys previewed any of those songs, like through any of your social media or any of that?
Yeah, we have. We put out just a couple of teasers. We actually played a live set in the Radio Boise basement a couple weeks ago for Listen Local Day, and we debuted a couple of brand new songs, on Radio Boise. We love them over there. They've been huge supports of us for a long time, and debuted a couple there. And then we're always putting out teasers on social media, so you can hear some snippets there.
Awesome. And just since it's fresh on everybody's mind, can you tell me what the social media handles are for that?
Yeah, it's just Mylo_Bybee. A little bit of information. Mylo Bybee is the guy from Idaho who invented the finger steak. So if you can't remember our band name, remember finger steaks, and that's where it came from.
That's a fantastic little bit of trivia.
Yeah.
Idaho is so big on the finger steaks.
It really is. It really is. And we've had people, from out of town that we've played with ask us what our name is, and I'll tell them that. And if they're not from this area, they don't even know what a finger steak is.
Yeah.
And it makes for a really interesting conversation. But
I'll admit, like I said, I've been here for about 20 years. I think I found out about finger steaks about 20 years ago.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, excellent. Tyler, thank you so much for chatting with me. Is there anything that I missed talking with you about that you want to say?
I don't think so, no. I just appreciate the platform. And like I said, we're a community that's full of people like yourself that do such a great job in what you're doing, podcasts, video, anything here. And so we just really appreciate the platform.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining me on the Boise Art Scene podcast. I'm Morgan McCullum. You can catch us on any of your streaming platforms, youtube.com or boiseartscene.com. Thanks for listening.